the foundation of how I view things. There are many other scripture verses that one can lean on to around integrity. But the whole point being that if you have security in God, then you do not need to amass wealth. Because how much is enough? So, without conviction, then, throughout my life, my professional life in particular, and at home, and by the way, one of the things that I can even challenge anybody is, we talk about wholesomeness or undividedness, is what I say at work, you can go and ask my children, you can go and ask my friends, you can go and ask my relatives. They will say exactly the same thing. And my children understand, for example, that the one thing that I hold very firmly is around integrity. Is around not acting in a manner that will compromise your morals. So that's why I talked about wholesomeness and being consistent throughout your life. I wanted to zero in on then how, after you have this conviction, how do I ensure that this is practiced in an organization? For example, after leaving GE or General Electric, then I joined Jambojet. And like I said, I didn't apply for the job. And like I said, one of the things that was attractive to the Jambojet board was because they felt that they could trust me. They could entrust me with this company that they had. So, in transitioning from Jambojet, which is a good company, smaller company, it's actually quite a large company by Kenyan standards, but smaller compared to what I'm faced with today. It was easy because in Jambojet we had it easier because in Jambojet we have about 400 people who serve that company. So it was easy for us to change the culture. And one of the things, for example, that I did in that company was to introduce integrity as one of their core values and actually describe what that looks like. How does integrity look like to everybody? So with that sense thinking, I transitioned from Jambojet to Kenya Airways, and this is what I want to spend a bit more time here. Now, Kenya Airways is a large company. I think some of you should, by Kenyan standards, I have to add, it is a large company. It's actually one of the largest companies in Kenya because we have 4,500 people. It is the only company in Kenya which is truly global. Some companies might be bigger, like Safaricom, in terms of turnover, but Safaricom is regional because it has a branch in. Is there anybody from Safaricom here? So we can backbite them a little bit. So Safaricom is a Kenyan company, but it only has a branch in Ethiopia. We also have large companies like Equity and KCB and NCBA and so on, which are Kenyan companies, but they are regional. You know, they have branches all around East Africa. Kenya Airways, on the other hand, is a company that has offices in 43 countries around the world. And not just that, it is in 4 of the continents around the world. So we have offices in New York, people working for us in New York, we have people working for us in London, Amsterdam, Paris, China, India, all around Africa, and a very recognizable brand. So it's an important company. It plays an ambassadorial role for Kenya around the world. It is also a legacy company, so it's been there for a long time now. Kenya Airways was formed in 1977 after the defunct East African Airways collapsed because of Kenyans' greed. Because that's the truth. We were not trusted by our neighbors. So that is why East African Airways, East African community actually collapsed. So Kenya Airways was formed in 1977. So it has legacy issues, it has legacy thinking. So what I'm trying to say is that it's an old man, and you know old men are difficult to bend. Am I right? Yeah. So when I joined this company, it took quite a lot of time to understand. And by the way, I think many of you might have heard this story. I was entrusted, maybe I should say this one actually, so that you understand the context. So how did I join Kenya Airways? The way I joined Kenya Airways was in 2019, there was a vacancy which needed to be filled urgently. So I was asked to go in and act for a period of time. And I went there reluctantly because I was in Jambojet and very excited with what we were doing in Jambojet. Because we were growing, we were doing very exciting things. We were doing flyer bus, very exciting with colors, pink and, very vibrant, opening up new routes. We opened Kigali and Tempe, so it was very exciting. So to be moved from this excitement into this old man needed a lot of convincing, I can tell you that, including prayer. And then my wife was standing with me. So anyway, eventually, I agreed to go and act for a period of time because they were still recruiting. This was in 2020. So I acted from January 2020 to April of 2020. And by the time my acting period was coming to an end, they nudged me, the board nudged me through the chair and said, "Would you like to stay?" I said, "No, I want to go back to Jambojet." And lo and behold, back and forth, and eventually, through a lot of prayer, I can say that, I agreed to stay. But I have to say it was grudgingly. Because again, like I said, I was enjoying my stay in Jambojet. But when I put my hand to the plow, I discovered a few things, and one of them was the convictions. I mean, we had, of course, we had values, and one of them, in fact, was integrity. But how was that being lived out? What did that actually mean to the people? Okay? So describing it in its fullness and making sure that it is not just something that is said, it is not just a favorite thing that people say, because it's actually quite nice to say, God is good all the time. All the time, God, this is nature. Wow. Those cliches that we Kenyans like saying, but not quite believing in what they mean. So that's what I saw. And I really wanted to move it away from just nice things to say, a nice word to have on a church, and starting to live it out. So number one was to lead from the front. Having an open book. In fact, I remember communicating to my team about integrity, and there are many other values, but I'm focusing on integrity. And really telling them that for me, first of all, learn from me, watch me, hold me to account. Secondly, if all sins are, like the Bible says, all other sins are forgivable, but the one thing that is not forgivable is when you bend the rules when it comes to integrity, when you steal. In fact, the one thing I introduced was, I say to them, one strike and you're out. You can be incompetent at what you do at work. And if you're incompetent, if you have issues around performance, you can be forgiven. You can be retrained. You can be supported. You can be redeployed. Isn't it? But when it comes to matters of stealing or fraud or lying, my mantra is one strike and you're out. In other words, if we discover that you've stolen, then we will remove you. I'll give you an example. So we had, we typically give, for some of our ground staff, we give them airtime, of course, so that they can call and so on. What we discovered they were doing, some of them, not all of them, were doing, is that they were getting the airtime and then they were sending it to their friends and relatives. So of course, then in the end, the airtime is exhausted. So it was a big scheme that was happening. It wasn't much. I mean, in fact, it's actually quite shameful, because some of them were stealing like 2,000 shillings. Some was more, some were 10,000 shillings, but some of them is 2,000 and so on. So when we discovered and we were able to identify who they were, all of them lost their jobs. And I remember some people coming to me and saying, but it's just 2,000. And I say, no, it's not about the money, it is a principle. Okay? It is a principle. Some people, because of their incompetence, have lost us a lot more money. But that sin is forgivable. The sin of the other one is. So, being an open book, number one. I remember also, after thinking about this country, I was saying to myself, how can I play a role in supporting change the thinking of particularly the young people? And actually the problem, I have to say, is the older people, my age group. This is where the problem is. And so we pass the bad manners to the younger people. So what role can we play in helping to change the thinking of young people? The greed that I spoke about. So I remember going to my other fellow CEOs of big companies, and I'm not going to mention them, but the large ones that you know, and I say to them, why don't we do this? Because many people look up to us, and they listen to us. Why don't we open ourselves up for scrutiny and tell them that you can make it without stealing? Then open it up yourself for scrutiny. Be an open book. Let the young people actually ask questions with regard to how you made your money, when, which loan did you take to buy that item or this item? How do you do it in your organization? And I tried this over and over, and every time I tried to do this, because it's about a person, they kept deflecting it to the organization. See, it's not an organization that practices integrity, it's individuals in the organization. Okay. So what I wanted to do is use yourself, particularly with people who have influence. Many Kenyans have lost faith in their politicians, but they still have an inkling of faith in business leaders. So that's what I was trying to do, but I failed. Maybe I'll try again. So that's leading from the front. The other one is communication. Being explicit, I already kind of mentioned this to you. How do you communicate explicitly that this is a no-go zone, that this is how you do your thing? Well, when I talk about communication, it's both learned communication, or how people see you, and also what you say consistently. Okay? So how do you, in the organization, for example, in Kenya Airways, we have our value, integrity. We have defined what that looks like, and then we communicate it from time to time. In my town halls, not every town hall, so I have a town hall every quarter, there's a section that we talk to integrity. So communicating that consistently, not just at work, but everywhere. The idea is to be accountable. Because people catch behaviors. You know, they don't listen to you, they actually watch you and emulate you. And the last one is about monitoring. How do you prevent and then detect issues around integrity? So one of the things that after much thought, like I said, in Kenya Airways, it was a little bit more difficult to do it. I thought that this was going to be a cultural transformation agenda. So changing people's behavior is going to take time because it's culture, it's ingrained in people. And so I had to appoint a champion or champions. So in KQ, for example, we have a department. We call it Integrity and Ethics. It's not like ESCC. Integrity and Ethics. And Integrity and Ethics has a senior manager who reports to me directly. Then we also have a committee. And the committee is chaired by myself. And we report every quarter to the Audit and Risk Committee of the board. So what does the committee do? Sorry, what does the department do? The department has, the mandate first of all is sensitization of people, explaining to them and reminding them around issues about ethics and integrity. Okay? So again, like I said, how does that look like exactly in practice? There are many questions, there are many gray areas, so clarifying those gray areas. That's number one. Number two is enforcing a commitment by all employees. All employees are required to sign up and commit themselves to matters around integrity. And so it's a mandatory process. It's a digital process. Remember, we have 4,500 people across the world. If you're an employee of Kenya Airways, you're required to sign this, including to sign up for conflict of interest. Number three is to be the ombudsperson or ombudsperson. So this is anonymous. You can report matters around integrity directly to the senior manager who's in charge of ethics, and then the list of these reports is presented to the committee, which I chair. We go through each of them and we assign an investigator. Investigation is done, action is taken, and the feedback is given to the reporter. Sometimes they're anonymous, so it's difficult to get back to them. This report is also presented to the board. You know, what has been reported, what action has been taken. So people get more confidence that we don't tolerate this kind of behavior. And then lastly is to surveys they take to identify which areas we have vulnerabilities around. Okay, so this is how we monitor the matters around integrity. We also have best practice sharing, so we work a lot. Actually, we live in ESCC, the ethics and integrity, ESCC, ethics and anti-corruption, anti-corruption commission. Yeah, so we do that with them and also with other organizations around the world. So that's how we monitor it. So now, Prof requested me to talk a little bit more about Kenya Airways and the turnaround, which I want to end with. So I already mentioned we took the job in 2020. And those of you who remember 2020 was a very difficult year around the world, and more specifically in aviation, because all our aircraft were grounded. Okay, so we came up with some of the things that we did is, so first of all, because we reduced our salaries significantly at some point, I remember in July of 2020, I think we paid 19% of the salaries to employees. So there was a difficult period there. And one of the things that I thought about was, and by the way, let me just say this. Again, organizations are about people. And people need to know that you care as a leader. Okay? And you have to demonstrate care in very many ways. When you demonstrate care when they really need to be cared for. The two areas that I have tried in the best way I can to demonstrate is the issues around how they live their lives. So in this case, for example, when we were 18%, I spoke to some very good partners. Unilever was one of them, Bitco was another, Coca-Cola, Upfield. And I requested them because I told them, you must be having excess stock because people are not buying as much as they can you donate some stocks to us so we can give some supplies to employees. So in that month of July, June and July, we actually got stocks from companies which were giving us hampers to employees. And it may not have completely satisfied their financial need, but it showed that we cared. And that was a very important marker. The second one is when it comes to bereavements. I have 4,500 employees. But the commitment I have made to myself, not to the company or to anybody else, is when my employee, any one of the 4,500, lose either their spouse or their children or they themselves pass on, and make it an effort to visit the family or to go for the funeral. And it's not easy, because remember, we have 45 countries around the world. So for example, in March, we had a very tragic case where we had one of our people in South Africa whose only 2 children, 8 and 6, were traveling in a bus. They collided, and both of them died instantly. So I had to travel to South Africa to condole with them. And she came the other day. She came last week. She came to Nairobi to say thank you, and we're taking her to therapy here in Nairobi. So the point being, and I do that quite often, I think we've lost 2 people so far. In fact, one is being buried today. I was in their home early this week in Karen, along with the parents. The point I'm making is people need to know that you care, because organizations are about people. So if you want to make change in organizations, first of all, people need to see that you care, the organization cares for them as people. So that cultural transformation of caring for people supports the organization, supports me to help make the changes that we need to make. So 2020 was about survival. 2021 was also about survival. Then we came up with a plan, and the plan was surviving the crisis, the first phase of it. So in surviving the crisis, it was about conserving cash, it's about reducing costs, and trying to fly as much as possible. We negotiated with a lot of our suppliers to reduce, we got moratoriums from some of them, from the banks and so on. So the next phase, from 2021 to 2022, was about restructuring, coming back. So again, we looked at, optimized most of our operations, particularly fleet, network, people, assets, optimization. And then the last phase was about growth. Because, and by the way, there's a footnote. Running an airline, I believe, is the most difficult organization anywhere on earth. And I can bet my salary on this one. It is extremely difficult. Let me tell you why, briefly, and I'm digressing, but it's important. First of all, airlines are very heavy capital investments. I don't know, some of you fly with us, so the biggest aircraft we have is called a Dreamliner. Do you know how much a Dreamliner costs? One Dreamliner costs, in Kenya shillings, because that will make the numbers bigger. Any guess? Maybe someone can guess. Just one. What do you think, Prof? Just guess. I'm putting it up to 1 billion shillings. 1 billion shillings. Multiply that by 23. One Dreamliner. We have 9 of them. Okay? So I'm just demonstrating how costly it is to run an airline. It is also very labor intensive. And our labor is very costly because we have pilots, we have engineers, and there are many of them. And it's very heavily regulated. Because you cannot just, I remember one time I was talking to one of our politicians, and they were telling us, just change. I was telling them, it's not a matatu. Because it's very heavily regulated. You know, you have to, pilots have got time limits. You know, it's called flight limitation time. Engineers have the same, even the people that you see on the ground, because of safety issues. So it's very heavily regulated. I said we're in 43 or 45 countries around the world, 45 destinations around the world. Each of those countries have a different currency, different jurisdiction, different requirements, different everything. So you have to comply to 45 compliances. Very complicated. Then you have competition, very stiff competition, very thin margins. By the way, an airline that is doing well makes 3% margin at the bottom line. 3% margin at the bottom line. So any small thing that happens, it tilts you over into a loss position. So if you're a small airline, I said we are a big Kenyan company, but we are a very small airline globally because we have 34 aircraft. Around the world, big airlines, even Ethiopia, our neighbor here in Ethiopia, has 120 aircraft. Yes. So we're a small airline. So the airline is called a subscale airline. So to turn around that kind of airline is extremely difficult because every small thing that happens, it tilts you back into a loss position. So the solution is what we were trying to do between 2023 and 2024, which is to expand it. And some of you who have studied finance will know that there is something called economies of scale. Okay, so if you expand it, your unit cost comes down. If you don't, then all your fixed costs are concentrated on the 34 aircraft. That is why it is very difficult for African airlines to turn around because they are all subscale. I mean, I've been championing what is called consolidation, which is another topic altogether because we're talking about integrity. So, very difficult airline to turn around. So we did all that, and we started to expand and to grow. We intensified our network a lot more, and of course, we cannot say that we did everything. We did also a lot of prayer. I introduced the day of prayer in KQ to people found that very interesting. So we have a day of prayer, not just a day of prayer, we also have a day of Thanksgiving. In fact, for the last few years, many companies have Christmas parties, which is okay. Actually, I have no question, I have no problem with it. But because we didn't have a lot of money, instead of having Christmas parties, I introduced two things instead. One, I introduced a family day, where you can bring your family, go look at the aircraft. Some children have never seen an aircraft, and their father or mother works in an airline, so they come in and see the aircraft, they sit in, they have fun. And they also introduced a Thanksgiving Day, which is to thank God for bringing us to the close of that year. And then I unfortunately had removed the Christmas party, which some people were not very happy with. But I thought that was important. I told them when we are able to afford, we'll bring back the Christmas party later on. But I thought this was more important. So, talking about growth, growth was within the assets that we had, not increasing the assets, and we've done that. And through prayer and all the hard work that these 4,500 people have done, that is the result that you saw in last year, in 2025. Of course, there was also support that we got because the Kenya shilling stabilized, or actually came down, so we got a lot of forex gains there, which we were happy to take, and so on. Now, the problem with being successful is that you're held to a very high standard now. Okay? So we now have challenges going forward because we were hoping that by now we would expand, but in fact we have contracted because we don't have enough funding. We are underfunded, we are undercapitalized as a company. And if there is anything that an airline needs more than anything else is cash. Not even profitability, cash. If you're not generating cash in an airline, you're in trouble. So this year we've not generated enough cash because some of the capital investments that we were hoping to invest in, we were not able to invest. And so it's not, we have actually contracted from last year. I'm just talking openly, although maybe I shouldn't because we're listed. Yeah, but we've contracted from last year. So we are trying to rectify that situation by getting funding. I think I've spoken openly in many fora to say that we are looking for investors, or we are looking for capitalization in whatever form, either through an investor, strategic investor, which is probably the best way, or through government of Kenya if they want to invest more in the airline, and so on. If we are not able to recapitalize, we will shrink further and we will increase our cost and unfortunately slip back to where we were before. So it's very important for us to go in that direction of expansion and also not just to make profit, because an airline, more important than profit, because profit is for shareholders, but there are more stakeholders than shareholders. And the stakeholders, most of them are, for example, Kenyans. You know, every Kenyan owns Kenya Airways, by the way. I get so many, either criticisms or encouragement or thoughts, which is good, because Kenyans feel like they own the airline. And that's wonderful, that's fantastic. So that's how we've been able to do so far. I think, I've even surpassed my time. But with that, I think I just want to thank you one more time for inviting me. I hope these thoughts and experiences that I've shared this morning have been useful in some way to help think through matters of integrity, but the important thing is to have conviction, to have a long view of things, and to live out your conviction. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. God bless you.